Now here we are getting the value of the R square. Now what is R square? R square is the ratio between ESS and TSS. So R square is equal to ESS divided by TSS, and the value of the R square that we are getting is 0.9391. So we can say that the explanatory power of the regression model is very high. Now what is the interpretation of R square here? The interpretation is that if the total variation is 100%, then out of that 100% variation, 93% variation can be explained by the regression model. So if we consider that total variation in consumption, the variable consumption is 100%. Now out of that 100%, the 93% variation can be explained by the explanatory variables income and education. So therefore we can say that the explanatory power of the regression model is very high. So this is the interpretation of R square. Now we are getting at the adjusted R square also, and the value of the adjusted R square is 0.9217. Now as we can see from the result that the value of the adjusted R square is less than R square. So always the value of the adjusted R square is less than the value of R square. Now what is adjusted R square? Adjusted R square is the value of the R square adjusted for the degrees of freedom. So in the R square, we are having ESS in the numerator and TSS in the denominator. Now what is the degrees of freedom of ESS? Degrees of freedom of ESS is 2, that we are getting from the ANOVA table. And what is the degrees of freedom of TSS? The degrees of freedom of TSS is 9. Now if we adjust the ESS with this degrees of freedom 2 and TSS with this degrees of freedom 9, then we will be getting the value of the adjusted R square. And that value is always less than the actual R square. Now why we should interpret adjusted R square by adjusted R square is more important than R square, because R square does not give us the true explanatory power of the model. So if we keep on increasing the number of regressors on the right hand side, the value of R square will be continuously increasing. So in that case, we will not be able to get the true explanatory power of the model. So therefore, in order to get the true explanatory power of the regression model, we have to restrict the value of the R square with the degrees of freedom. And then only we will be able to get the actual explanatory power or the true explanatory power of the model. So that true explanatory power of the model is expressed by the adjusted R square. So that is why it is more important to interpret the value of the adjusted R square rather than interpreting the value of the R square. So here the value of the R square is 0.94 and the value of the adjusted R square is 0.92. Now 0.92 is less than 0.94. So therefore 90, as per the value of the adjusted R square, 92% of the variation in the variable consumption is explained by the regressors income and education. So this gives us the true explanatory power of the regression model.